What's up, everybody?
Yo,
What's
yo.
going on? How you feeling?
Good, brother. How are you?
I'm doing great. DJ Bond's going to join us in?
Yeah, I know
Okay.
I see that he joined. Let's see. I'm over here already nodding my head. Oh, there we go.
Yo, yo, yo.
How you guys feeling?
Good, man. Good.
Good.
Hey, thank you for the opportunity this evening to talk about your latest documentary that's coming on the
Thank
24th,
you.
Where We're From. For
Thank you. Thank
everybody
you.
joining on, this is History Lesson, episode 158. I am with DJ Bonds and DJ Breeze. Thank you guys so much for joining me, like I said, this Friday evening.
Really appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having us, man.
No doubt. I'm anxious to get into this interview because I want to learn more about elements and everything that it's contributed to the culture. But before we do that, I want to take it back with you guys, where you're born and raised, how you met, and all that good stuff. So we'll start with you, Breeze. Born and raised.
Born and raised in LA. Born and raised in LA. Grew up in the Koreatown, MacArthur Park area, which is a heavy Salvadoran community there. So all my Salvadoran people, and I know a lot of people are like, "Oh shit, he's Salvadoran," like right now. But anyway, yeah, born and raised in LA, man. Born and raised in LA.
How about you, Bonds?
Born and raised in LA. Well, actually, I really grew up in the valley out here. So the 818 San Fernando Valley out here. And met this dude, Breeze. Shit, I was maybe 14, 15 years old. I was hanging with older folks who would bring me into these different spots in the LA Underground.
Mm-hmm.
And he was one of the friends, mutual friends. And we ended up, going to some spots together as, I don't say kids, but you know what I'm saying? He's the old man of the crew, or older than me at least. And then, later on we kind of reconnected at a mutual job. And from there we developed a really good friendship,
Before the reconnection, let's take it back to a little bit. What was the day in the life like of growing up in California as teenagers?
I think Bonds
I
can
got
sum
some
that
stories
up.
for
Yeah,
that.
go ahead.
I got some stories
I know
for
you do.
that. So,
And I pretty much,
yeah.
second whatever he says,
Put like this, growing up in LA, especially, I'm born in 77, right? So, we be talking, 90, 91, 92, being, 13, 14, 15.
Yeah.
And, we walk out the house and you want to go with your friends to the mall to pick up on some girls or whatever. You're walking in a pack of 4 to the bus stop to get to, the Northridge Mall. And you're literally getting slammed by SAs or by gang members. Be like, where you from? And if you said the wrong thing, you'll get fucked up. And then on top of that, in the same trip, not only get fucked by the gang members, but the cops could fuck with you because you're in a gang of 4, and they had a LA ordinance where if you were a group of 4 or more, that you're considered a gang.
Yeah.
So, I had to literally break dance to prove I'm not a gang member, that I'm a dancer. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't tell by how big my pants are and stuff like that. So, like, growing up, you got fucked with by the cops. You got fucked with by,
Mm-hmm.
you got fucked with by the gang members. But we were those DJs, the dancers, MCs. We were like Cube says, the brothers with funny haircuts, dancing in a circle. That was us. You know what I'm saying? So, we're part of that culture.
Right. You second that emotion, Breeze?
I do. I mean, it wasn't much different in central LA either. It was first time I saw a dead body, I was already 6 years old. So, I remember, so it was the norm in that area. MacArthur Park is still bad, actually, right now. It hasn't really even been changed that much over the years. So yeah, it was you had to deal with crackheads, you had to deal with gang members, you had to deal with the cops, and then you had to deal with your family at home. If hopefully
Right.
a lot of our friends didn't have really stable home lives either. So that's what it was like growing up in LA, especially the 80s. 80s was on another level, especially when crack hit. it really took over black and brown communities, and it was wild out here. Yeah.
Right. Outside of music, what kind of interests did you guys have earlier on?
For
Earlier
me, I played everything.
on,
I was football, basketball, you
oh,
name it, that kind of
oh,
thing. As far as teenager type stuff, and then later on, it became all about education and working at juvenile halls, teaching a kid how to do fractions for the first time in his life, or working at a probation school and teaching a kid how to DJ. Like there's an after school program where I teach kids how to DJ and stuff like that. So for me, it's always been one leg in music and one leg in education, that kind of thing.
Right.
So.
my father was a musician, so the family, the household was always about music. So I had always looked up to him as a kid, and I wanted to sort of follow in his footsteps. I mean, but I went more into hip hop production and recording engineering and things like that. And he played salsa and Latin jazz, and so he never really was like, well, "What are you doing?" Like, he didn't really understand it too much. But growing up, it was always about music in my household. So
Right. Let's
yeah.
talk about that. Earlier on, before you guys got into music, being DJs, what
Mhm.
were your earlier influences music-wise, and what were you seeing earlier on out in California?
As far as music or hip hop, I'm sorry.
What was your first, was it music? Some would say, they got into Isley Brothers and it progressed into
Oh,
hip-hop.
well, like I was just saying, my father was a musician. My father's where I got the musical ear, but my mother is who I got the musical love from. She played everything in the house, from disco to funk to reggae, rock, and of course salsa, which is what my father played. So I grew up with everything, listening to everything. But yeah, when hip hop came on the scene, like the first song, my first exposure was Houdini, "The Freaks Come Out at Night." And when I saw that video, it changed my life. But my folks were still kind of like, "What is this?" I mean, Bonds and I were old enough that we come from this era where it was still considered the devil's music. It was still like, it was making the news, like, "What is this music?" And parents were
Yeah.
really against it,
Two Live
And
Crew.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we come from that era. So to see it go from that to this is very interesting. But so I had to beg my mother to go buy me that record. I was like, please, because they just didn't really understand it. We saw the beginning of it, and that's something that I don't take for granted anymore, that we saw the beginning of it. But yeah, there was a lot of resistance from, if you weren't hip hop, people didn't understand it. People just
Right.
didn't understand it. And like if I saw, it was dope though, because I was the only child. So if I saw a kid who I've never seen in my life before, and he had on a Kango and fat laces, and so did I, we could just look at each other and be like,
Yeah.
yeah, I've never met you in my life, but and so it was very cliquish and very rebellious, and sort of, if you weren't in hip hop, fuck you, get out. Sorry, excuse my French,
That's
but
all
you know what I'm
good.
saying.
Yeah.
So that's what we come. Bonds and I come from that era. So to see it now, where it's just so commercialized and accepted as part, and you see it everywhere, it's a trip.
Right.
But that's what it
Yeah.
was like out here.
What about you, Bonds? Earlier influences before kind of gradually getting towards hip hop?
Well, similar to Breeze, my father was into music, but he was a DJ at the record store. So my Grandpa Billy Bonds, rest in peace. He owned a record store called Diana's House of Jazz in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Oh,
And my dad was a
that's where I'm
DJ.
That's where I'm located at, 30 minutes away.
Indianapolis, Indiana?
Word.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. 38th Street's a motherfucker.
Right.
So,
That's crazy.
yeah,
That's
so
dope.
my dad basically was the main person to kind of slang Aretha Franklin records and shit like that, right? In the 60s and the whole Motown era. So obviously he has a lot of vinyl. And so growing up, like literally 3 years old, I always had vinyl and music around in my life. You know what I'm saying? So, years later when I would go visit my cousins in Indiana because he was a single dad raising me, he would, make me go to grandma's house in Indiana and spend like the whole summer there. And my older cousins would play Run DMC and these tapes from like, Red Alert and all kinds of tapes that would come from New York to Indiana, which is crazy, right? When I really think about it now. But I just gravitated towards it. So when it was time old enough for me to actually basically start buying music, at 10 years old, he bought me my first turntable, you know, my stereo system, right? The York stereo system with the high speed dub, you know, for taping and all that, right? So, you know, he bought it for me for Christmas, and the first record I hear at like 4 o'clock in the morning, because he was sound checking and making sure he put it together right. He played LL Cool J on Bad, and I thought I was dreaming, you know, because the beginning is like, oh no, rapper, you know, and I'm hearing this blaring in my living room, come out with the pajamas and, you know, give him the biggest hug in the world. And like, I think looking back at that, I knew I really fell in love with hip hop in that moment. You know what I'm saying? Like, me and hip hop is just, it's a thing, you know. You know, I memorized that album, you know, Bigger and Deffer, and my cousins bought me 3 albums. They bought me LL Cool J, Bigger and Deffer. They bought me Eric B. and Rakim, Paid in Full, and they bought me Dane and Dane. So literally, as 10 years old, I'm memorizing Rakim's, you know, check out my melody and all that type stuff. So I'm blessed on the time I was born. Like, ain't nothing wrong if you're born, you know what I'm saying, now, and maybe you gravitate to J. Cole or some shit, but I was born where my first lyrics I'm memorizing is Rakim, you know what I'm saying? So I'm blessed for that, you know what I mean?
Right. You mentioned getting your first turntable. Is DJing your guys' first foray into hip hop? Some would say graffiti, breakdancing. Others would say DJing. What was you guys' first foray into hip hop?
Breakdancing. That was before I go any further, I would just want to send a shout out to everybody in here, because I can't really type back right now. But thank you, whoever's here. So I just want to say everybody's kind of like,
no doubt. Big shout out.
I can't say hi back. But
I was like, yo, I can't even type back.
I know.
You know what I'm saying?
Shout out to everybody who's joined in. But I was breakdancing when I saw that Houdini video, because this is in the early '80s when the music video was really prevalent. I mean, it is now as well, but it sort of you had this gap where it wasn't. But back then, just introduced, and so you had like a lot of music videos. So I saw this music video, and in Houdini's video, he's got these b-boys on there, and they're just killing it. And I was like, whatever that is, I want to do. You know, whatever that is. So that was my first thing, and then I started getting into beats, and then I didn't get into DJing really, honestly, until when we started Elements. That's about the time when I got into DJing. Bonds was already DJing, but I was already making beats for years. He used to come over my house and just scratch on my beats, and that's like an early memory of our childhood. And like I said, I'm the only child, so for me, having somebody come over and scratch on my beats was just so cool. So, but breakdancing is how I came in, you know, and I was like, I want to do that. Ruined all my socks, ruined all my pants, and you know.
Yeah, I think for me it's almost a tie between. I wasn't a really good graph writer. I was a tagger. You know what I'm saying? Well, I wasn't that dude that could do a good piece or nothing like that. You know what I mean? So maybe dancing first. You know what I'm saying? With the VHS tapes and recording those and trying to mimic how to be like Hammer. And then the Heavy D dancers, Big Daddy Kane's dancers, like whoever was the back, I was trying to be them. You know what I'm saying? And do that move, at the 5th grade and 6th grade dances and shit. And then whoever could somewhat dance like me or up to my skill level, obviously we got, cool or whatever, you know what I'm saying? And so growing up out here, my pops was like, you ain't going to public school. So he would pay for me to go to private school and shit, right? So, that whole only black kid in the whole fucking school thing, where you got to talk like Will Smith or Barack Obama all the fucking time. You know what I'm saying? That type shit, And then, I was cool with the essays. I was cool with the, white people. But something about Filipinos, like I just gravitate to them because they try to play ball. They like to dance. They love to DJ. You know what I'm saying? So, like, my first DJ partner ever was actually a Filipino cat. You know what I'm saying? So, anyway, shout out to my Filipinos out there,
No doubt. What time did the transition to DJ come into play, and what kind of dues did you have to pay around the LA scene to get your name out there as far as being a DJ?
You want me to take that one?
That's an interesting story because that's kind of the way Elements started, you could say, right? Bonds or
to a at certain, the time,
to a certain
extent. Go ahead. Yeah. I was doing, I started DJing when I was 12 or 13 years old, like literally where my dad would drop me off at a party, and then come pick me me up at 2 o'clock in the morning, because he was just that comfortable, or maybe, single dad type thing. You know what I mean? Maybe went to have a date, come back. I don't know. But I was rocking parties from a really early age. But around, I would say 17, 18, I started doing a lot of mixtapes, and I put them out on Melrose and stuff like that. And I started to, in 97, I was about to have a kid. So it went from just a mixtape game to I needed to scratch and DJ for as many people as possible to get paid. It was all about getting paid, you know what I mean? So my mixtape game was off the chain, and, buying my kid, Jordans and whatever, you know what I mean? But the grind came like really from that, becoming a father and trying to provide, for my kid. And so there was a show that I feel like kind of, I don't say put me on the map, but there was this KRS-One show where I was DJing for the Soul Brothers, which is, for me, kind of mind-blowing anyway, because I looked up to the Soul Brothers a lot as like a 13, 14-year-old. I was trying to do the same dances as the dancers in Def Jam videos, you know what I mean? So to be able to DJ for them and to see them in front of me dancing, that shit was a trip, But I was DJing with Mark Love, Rob One, and J-Rock. And for anyone who knows LA DJs, it's like staple LA hip hop, out here, And I don't know how many people were there, Breeze. What would you say, like 4,000 or 5,000? I mean, it was a decent crowd,
Yeah.
that was there that
They
night.
kicked out a lot of the crowd too, which was whack because they were over capacity.
So what was crazy is that was maybe 1 week or 2 weeks after we had started Elements. You know what I mean? So I felt like that was the moment of like, oh, Bonds is an LA DJ. He's rocking crowds. I have his mixtapes. There was no social media back then. So seeing my face for the first time, in the LA scene was that specific, concert. And it helped us get more people. We had a big old street team and flyers being, out there and stuff like that. So for me, that would be my first one.
Shout out to Polo.
Yeah.
No.
Polo Molina. He threw that show and now works with the Black Eyed Peas.
Yeah.
So you're saying the time frame about this time is 97, 98-ish?
98 is when we started Elements. July of 98.
Okay, if we can back it up just a little bit, places like the Good Life Cafe, Project Blowed, is that some of the places you guys frequented earlier on? And what were you seeing, and what kind of inspiration did you draw from there?
I mean, there were other spots as well. Project Blow came after Good Life. Good Life was first. And so I went to Good Life maybe only a few times. It depended on what you wanted, Like I said, we were mostly dancing at the time. So Project Blow Good Life wasn't really a place that you went for that.
Yeah, you can
per se, like, but to go there as an MC was heaven, you know what I mean?
Right.
But there were other spots too, like Graveyard Shift, you had Water the Bush, you had Brown Rice and Barbecue, you had
Funk Jungle.
Yeah, thank you. You had a lot of spots happening at the time where you can hear just dope hip hop. So and then of course there was Unity. Unity was, the creme de la creme, as I say. That was where, like, the first time we saw Wu-Tang, the first time we saw Black Moon, rest in peace, Bigga B. Yeah, that was like, and yeah. So there was a lot of spots to go to before Elements. The film doesn't necessarily cover the beginning. We're covering just sort of a period, but it is an important period because even though you had spots going on, like LA wasn't really established yet. It was still about New York. It was definitely still about New York. And our era is really when LA was really putting its foot down, and then the independent label scene was really emerging. You had labels like ABB, Stone's Throw, Good Vibe. On the East Coast, you had Raucous that was doing their thing. So it was because before that, like acts like Run DMC, Gangstar, whatever, they were more on major labels. You still had a major label influence, whereas cats like Dilator, they were already giving their middle finger to labels like, we don't need you,
Yeah.
but so that was it was that era, and it was more about LA. You had groups like J5, Freestyle Fellowship, Dilated, Self Scientific. It was West Coast was really starting to come into its own, and we were the stage for it.
So you guys meet early on. You don't see each other for a while. At what point do you guys reconnect again?
We reconnected. I think where Bond said, like, we ended up working together at the same job. You know, back then it seemed like like getting out of high school or something, everybody had a telemarketing job. And so, you know, we just ended up working at the same spot. And I was like, hey, I remember you, you know, and that's when we really started hanging, like he said earlier,
Yeah.
you know, and then not too long into that, you know, he was wanted to DJ more, and I wanted people to start hearing my beats more. So he was kind of like, yo, he came up with the idea for Elements. I named it, but he was like, let's start this spot so we can put ourselves there and invite other people as well. But then, like I said, we just happened to be at the right place at the right time because of the era that we were in and everybody else around us. So it ended up becoming about the club and not necessarily about our goals anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and that's pretty much how Element started. We brought in Damon, his cousin, who was the believer and financed everything. You know, so but I know Bonds can add to that. You know,
Yeah,
that's
I trip out because today we put out a single by DJ Revolution and Planet Asia called Elements, right? It dropped today. It's on, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to music. We got a single that came out for the documentary.
yeah.
And, back then, I was thinking about how much I was hustling to feed my son, with scratching, a lot of studio scratches. But we were doing so much work together. He was working with so many different MCs, and I was DJing for so many artists, like doing performances. It was like if we had a spot where we could kind of showcase, you know what I'm saying, Breeze's beats and his talents, me as a DJ,
Yep.
like it'll help kind of, provide a platform for our own shit. You know what I'm saying? My cousin was the one who was like, yo, we'd also need like MC battles and some other shit. You know what I'm saying? And then that kind of took off, and we'll probably go more into that here in a second. But when you walk into a spot that just smells like piss, is all dark and dingy and all that type shit, I was like, this is underground hip hop. This is like strictly underground hip hop. Because when my cousin was like, yo, I'm gonna put money behind you, you got to be in the fucking club. I was playing some Puffy and Jay-Z. I was not playing Freestyle Fellowship. I was making, girls dance, and we was having fun. And he was like, yo, your skill set, you need to be like in a real club. And we did like 1 or 2 nights at the Martini Lounge. So if anyone knows what the Martini Lounge is, historic, LA spot. And then we got kind of like, I don't say kicked out, but they were like, yo, we got another promoter who's going to come in. Y'all can't be here next week. But go down to this little club called the GABA and go down there. And then, you walk in, the piss smell. And I was like, yeah, this is like underground hip hop right here. You know what I'm saying? Straight up and down. So I called Breeze first to be like, yo, here's the idea I'm thinking. All the beats you got, me DJing, bunch of artists. So the very first night of Elements, Soul Brothers performed, which is the group I was DJing for. Universal Daylight, again, a group I was DJing for. And Pass Azular, who Breeze did all the beats for. That was our first night at Elements, right?
Yeah.
And so it was just all acts that were us, for lack of a better word.
It was just a showcase of, who we were working with.
Yeah. So 20 some years later to finally have a song out on Spotify or whatever, you know what I'm saying, with Planet Asia and Rev doing the cuts and the beat, it's kind of like full circle moment. You know what I'm saying? Even though we're talking about the doc, coming out on Tuesday and all that, yo, I'm more excited about the fucking song I just put out. Like, I am amped. Like, playing that shit over and over in the car today, like, you know what I mean?
Right.
I'm amped on that shit.
Very dope. Earlier on with Elements, what kind of trial and error did you have to go through to get it to where you guys wanted it to be?
I think you got a good story with Rocka and all that.
Oh, wow. I don't even know if I want to put them on the
You want to go into that?
Of course we do. Of course. We want to hear that story.
Well, I was going to kind of there were some just shady promoters out here, and we weren't the only cats doing stuff. So there was always,
Yeah.
it got really cutthroat, You know, that's all I'm gonna say. But all I had to do was make one phone call and be like, "This is what's going on," and then they were like, "Okay," and it was Rocco. Rocco was like, "All right, let me call you right back," and you know, he called me back. He's like, "No, you guys are on. You guys are on," because there was a lot of that going on. You know, as far as promoting, I'm not gonna say the whole scene was like that because as the artists, they were definitely tight knit. You know, they supported a lot. You know, like the J5 cats would have Visionary shirts on, or the Visionaries would have Dilated shirts on, or would be buying this. So everybody was very supportive that way. But as far as promoters, there were some shady ass promoters out here, man. You know,
Yeah.
and we definitely had to deal with that. So, but it was all good, you know, because we had the support of the community already. Like I said, Rocka made one call and he was like, it's either Elements, family, or nobody. So, you know, when you have that type of support, it means a lot. So, which is why we're still able to do this now, 20, 25 years later, and get somebody like a Revolution, a Planet Asia to be like, yeah, I'll do it. Because I remember that, you know, if you read the post, you know, Asia, you know, when he Planet Asia, when he talks about, Elements, man, he lights up, you know, because you know it was always like we're treating you like family, but we also respect what you do. You know, we respected these guys for what they did as artists, and a lot of these promoters they just use these dudes up, you know, and we didn't. We were gonna make sure we treated you like a star tonight. You know, that's how it
Right.
was.
I
So
think the food too. Aunt Kathy
yeah,
with the food.
from
That soul
everything,
food? Come on,
from
man.
everything,
Should
man.
we would ask her like,
From
you know, or ask
everything.
the artist like,
Food,
yo,
weed,
on your
liquor.
rider,
Like,
what
what do you
kind of food
need?
you
What you
want?
need, bro?
Yeah,
We
you
got
want
you.
a veggie lasagna
We gonna take
and
care of you.
Aunt Kathy
Yeah.
hook it up. You know what I'm
We
saying?
would take care of people. Yeah. In a nutshell, we would take care of people, and not even just them. You know, I'm getting to the venue on show day at noon. Okay, and we don't leave till 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
All right, but I'm getting there at noon, and the first thing I'm saying is, "Yo, has security eaten? Has my sound people eaten? I want them to eat before they even get to work. Make sure everybody's fed." We both had that we both were just very like we got to take care of people. You got to take care of everybody, not just the artists. You got to take it all the way down, you know. So
Right.
yeah, we were those type of dudes. So whenever we did a show or something, they look forward to working with us, and they would give us their best effort, which is,
Yeah.
you know, all we ask. You know.
Uh, a lot of us were unfortunate enough not to attend. We wish we could have. I want to give everybody a visual of what it was like. What nights were these on?
Every Sunday.
Sunday
Well,
nights.
we started with a weekly. We started with a weekly, which was every Sunday, and so it was just like a weekly club. But then we transcended from the weekly club to bigger shows, where a bigger venue with the El Rey Theater, what used to be called the Palace, which is now I think the Avalon. I think I don't know, but so we transitioned to that. But we still kept the weekly while we were still in big shows. So we were
I
we
think the
were we were
craziest
running it like
time
that.
was
Yeah,
doing
that was.
two.
I don't know how I don't think we slept for like 3 years.
Now there was a time where we would do like CeeLo would kind of run the club, right?
Yeah,
You know, with you on a Sunday, and I would
yeah,
throw a show at the El Rey with ACL and the Coca Brothers. Like there was some
yep,
tour that we
yep.
booked.
Hmm.
So it was, you know, to the point of like literally throwing